All right. All right, Brac Webb, it's good to meet you. Thanks for
It's good to
joining.
meet you, Mike. Thank
Yeah,
you.
how you doing today?
Doing pretty well.
Very good. So today is kind of a big day for innovation. Google I/O happening right now. I was just watching some of it earlier, and they've um, they've really put artificial intelligence right front and center. As that was probably the first half hour of the keynote was all about AI and their natural language and understanding and all that. But yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. I mean, in general, like probably to the theme of your show, it's an exciting time to be alive with all those things happening and all the stuff that Elon Musk, Mike Zuckerberg and now Google talk about with AI, and it's going to be interesting to see that next steps across the industry. It's already creeping into a lot of things on our smartphones.
yep, that's right. And I want to ask you about that too as we get into this, as far as any of those technologies you might be leveraging. But first, if you want to just introduce yourself and Fifth Season, so that's your company, and so your role there, and everything about Fifth Season.
Sure. Well, I kind of got almost a little bit too many titles behind my name. I'm a co-founder of Fifth Season. I'm CTO and COO. And as we talk today, I think that'll make sense of why that is, because really the idea of, hey, let's go and innovate in indoor farming, particularly indoor vertical farming for us, and how do you operate said farm are really tightly intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that we have embraced with our tech forward approach. But Fifth Season has been an exciting venture. We've been working on it for 5 years now. We have a flagship farm in Braddock, Pennsylvania, which is part of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
We're in mini grocery stores here and in Ohio. And Fifth Season, we're all about fresh. We are disrupting the food chain by bringing folks fresh produce because it's grown literally right next door.
Mm-hmm.
We even had events in Braddock where people come to grab that produce. And so when it depends, our history is kind of the forward approach of looking at indoor agriculture, looking at vertical farming, what kind of automation was needed, and the tech problem went through there. But Fifth Season, and now when consumers look at it, it's the way I like to usually phrase that is like for them buying produce, it's, oh, look at this, it's locally grown.
Mm-hmm.
It gets here so quickly. Look at the amazing shelf life as a result, and not just because of our technology, but literally just because it's so close and you don't have the supply chain bringing it across the country. It's really fresh. And so we're bringing people fresh, healthy, non-herbicide, non-pesticide produce from a local environment. And that's enabled because of this amazing technology that we have, where we've had to reinvent and really, innovate, and to use that key term across every step of the growing process, but really almost like the manufacturing process of plants.
Right. So I came across Fifth Season and you on LinkedIn. I noticed there was an indoor ag summit coming up this month or next month, and there was just a whole list of companies that were on there. And this is an area that personally I haven't spent a lot of time in. So this is why one of the reasons I reached out to you is because I would love to learn more about what this is. And when I saw, vertical farming and indoor agriculture, these terms were somewhat foreign to me, honestly. And I'm a tech guy. I've been in software and technology in different industries like pharmaceuticals, healthcare, entertainment. But agriculture is one area that I'd love to understand a little bit better. So if you could explain, like, just what's the history of vertical farming? Where did that come from? What does that mean in indoor agriculture?
For sure. And I love to unpack that, demystify it. And, it's interesting because I'm a high tech person as well. I did not have originally an agriculture background, but I went to Virginia Tech. And,
Mm-hmm.
Just let me start off with this to say it's almost like a transcendence. There's all of these tech schools that were, ag schools, they still have agriculture. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of like, here's ag, and then you're going over to the high tech. And no one's really closing the loop, which is not how humanity really used to be. I mean, agriculture was where technology was developed. And so working on Fifth Season has been like a transcendence to me, to be closing that loop and realize, look at all of the great knowledge that already was in agriculture, that was already in food, everything from product development, when people are developing food products, how similar that is to tech development companies, how similar it is to software companies, and also just closing the loop to say, well, high tech shouldn't it apply here too, and then it just working together. So that's just been really interesting over just for my life, right? And I think that's an interesting for folks to think about. And so indoor agriculture, people are probably pretty familiar with greenhouses, right? And so as you took field farming indoors and created greenhouses, there's a term called controlled environmental agriculture that comes about. And so CEA, and a lot of times people are referring to greenhouses for that as well. But really in a greenhouse, you're not controlling everything. You don't control the sun. I mean, that's the main one to talk about. What you do take advantage of is you're assisting in the ebbs and flow of the environment with that greenhouse space and keeping the temperature more constant. And you're able to provide nutrient enriched water to the plants, right? And so let's just keep it simple, almost like dousing them with Miracle-Gro, as opposed to relying on the soil. So there are a lot more factors that you can control, but in a lot of ways, and with hydroponic type growing methods and stuff developed in greenhouses, it's certainly not the same as planting in a field. And so you can get much more efficient yield, much more consistent quality output from that. But you're going to open windows. There's going to be bugs and other pests that come in. You've got massive amount of 2D acres, so there's traveling around. So you're still going to have those herbicides, you're still going to have those pesticides, you're still going to have a lot of water leaks with that large footprint going around, and stuff can grow in the water if it's sitting somewhere and you don't even see it. There's going to be a lot of dirt around. And so it's very much, it still feels very much like an agricultural environment. So what's interesting about vertical farming, so when greenhouses were basically when LEDs, let me say this also, greenhouses will supplement if it's a cloudy day, they'll turn on some lights. It used to be regular light bulbs, and now a lot of places use LEDs. And so that's one way that you get that consistency, like I said, and kind of augment the outdoor environment. And so folks for a long time thought, well, heck, I mean, I could stop relying on this sun that has all of these different issues that it causes for me. As someone who's in charge of the tech of a large greenhouse once told me, he said the sun is not free. We have to open the windows. We have to deal with all the bugs, the herbicides, the pesticides, all of the paints that come from anything from the outdoor environment exposing this. He's like, so there's actually a good amount of cost to it. So there's a good amount of cost savings by just not using the sun, quote unquote, even though you have to use energy to drive LEDs. So as LEDs became CapEx efficient enough to buy and then OpEx efficient enough to run from an energy usage point, it's like, let's go 3D. And so folks first did that and said, so let's take indoor agriculture, which really, and controlled environmental agriculture, that now starts to look at those two main things. There's a greenhouse and there's a vertical farm. And it was, the thought was like, well, let's just go vertical. But then new problems arose. So they realized that even though you could span with labor all of that 2D space, if you have the same equivalent 2D space in a 3D space, essentially having to travel less, they still had labor issues and complexity getting and dealing with the plants. And so from that angle, what we're seeing today and what companies like ours, how we got started was looking at, well, how can automation help that out? But honestly, as we've continued to peel this onion, and I think as many other companies that started even on that next wave of realizing there's automation there to handle that 3D space, you really start to realize also that vertical farming, unlike a greenhouse, is looking more like a biological manufacturing environment than an agricultural environment. And so you really can go from seed to the package and everything that's in it in one super clean, smart, in a lot of ways, smart manufacturing type method. And that's what we've embraced here at Fifth Season.
So when you use the term vertical, is that referring to like the narrow band of types of plants and crops that you're growing, or is vertical meaning that it's in a building? Like that's how.
Yeah. Vertical literally mean because you don't have to have exposure to the sun, that you could have plants growing on a level on top of another one, or you could have plants growing up a wall and just, almost have walls next to each other and the lights facing sideways, right? So it's almost easier sometimes. And it is true that when you have what I call true CEA, what vertical farms allow, it's like you're controlling everything in that environment.
Yeah.
You could say, well, what would stop you from doing this on Mars? Nothing, right? It's that same thing. So in zero gravity, does it really matter how you're oriented to the plants, as long as the light's getting to them? That's really the way to think about it. Yeah.
So I saw that IKEA has some kind of outbuilding that they're doing some vertical farming with, and it's some kind of movement they're trying to get into. So really, if you can put together any space indoors and the right kind of lighting. And I'm assuming that you need some humidity conditions or whatever in order to grow. You can pretty much grow anywhere inside. Is that true?
That is correct. Yeah. Yeah, I would say today, I mean, if you wanted to take a room in your house and convert it, you totally could, and use very hydroponic or aeroponic, and there's even various details behind those methods to grow, and that's something I can touch on too if you want to know a little bit more about that. But I want to mention that you touched on the humidity and temperature, right? And that's actually the most important factors to plants. And so, again, when you look at vertical farming, you say, hey, it's a 3D space, we got to move stuff around, but you also have this chance to have this truly controlled, 100% controlled environment, which means you need to have great HVAC. And a lot of folks have also learned that the hard way. So we worked to get a very high-end HVAC system that was ready to handle what the plants need. And so we don't have microclimates really in the more complicated sense of the word. In other words, we're not going, and this happens even in greenhouses, where growers are saying, okay, well, in this pocket of the room or in this pocket of the farm, we're going to have to grow this slightly different. We're going to irrigate different. We're going to run the lights different. I mean, we have at most like a 1 degree Celsius difference across our entire growing environment. So really pristine control. And what that leads to from an innovation standpoint is you say, well, gosh, if it's the same every time, I guess the plants would come out the exact same every time. And it is like manufacturing a widget. That widget just happens to be plants, and that's 100% true. So it's the guaranteed growth cycle time that we have. We'll get that crop the same way after 21 days every single time.
Right. And so you're saying that with LED light, you can emulate get enough whatever photosynthesis. Is that it? That makes things happen?
Exactly.
I'm pulling from my 6th grade science right now.
That's okay. I always joke, it's like I'm great at growing in these environments we made to do hydroponic style vertical farming. But if I try to grow in a soil potted plant in my house, it doesn't go anywhere. So.
Yeah. So you were talking about your growing environments. So talk about a bit about how Fifth Season has set up their indoor. How have you set up all of your growing environments there? Is it all one location, or is it you have it spread out?
Yeah. So we have one flagship farm at 60,000 square feet. 25,000 square feet of that is what we call the growing environment. And so to get in and out of that, I mean, really, you look at the process. You receive items, the media, the seeds, the fertilizer we mix to make our nutrient-enriched water, this Miracle Grow.
Okay.
And there's a smart manufacturing process that we have that the farm basically wakes up and says, seed me this. And we can do that because we have deterministic growth time. So whatever was where this needs to go is already been coming out, is already planned to come out. And so a grower doesn't need to go in there and say, hey, does this need another day or two? So anyway, as these seeding go into our grow environment, that is all moved by machines. So we in some of the ways we innovate, and I can touch on more of this later once we get in depth, but we bring plants to the people, not people to the plant. So someone there helps it get seeded with machines, and then the machines take it away. They take it into this grow environment where humans don't have to go. The plant is just grown. It gets the LEDs. It gets the irrigation of that nutrient-enriched water. It has that very controlled temperature, humidity environment. So that 25,000 square feet, we've split it into 2 different main environments that we can grow in. And the plants go through their life cycle there, sometimes moving to get different environmental settings, namely around LED spectrum, around the light intensity from the LEDs. And then when they're at their time that they're ready to come out to be harvested, they come out that day.
And how long does that cycle take to harvest?
It varies based on the crop. So our spring mixes are at 21 days, and that's certainly at least a week, if not sometimes 2, faster than you would get in traditional farming.
That was going to be my next question. Yeah. So what does that mean? 21 days. So you plant, and then 21 days later you can harvest?
We package it. Yep.
No
we harvest
kidding.
it and we pack it, and it goes to the store, and then it goes to the store the day after that.
And what kind of what are you growing exactly?
So we have two main spring right now. We have 2 main spring mixes. Spinach, which is unlike any spinach I've ever tried before. It's amazing. I've always liked spinach, but this may be a spinach lover. I mean, the quality of what we grow is because the plants get that perfect environment. I mean, it's amazing taste. You literally taste it and you say, oh, this is what it's supposed to taste like. It's one of those stories. And then our 4th main SKU that we just came out with is baby romaine. And so we have our own approach to baby romaine. What's exciting about our products is we have economies of scope. So everything that we grow can also go in our ready to eat salads. And because it's herbicide and pesticide free, we can just take it directly from what's harvested and put it in the salad with the beans or the cheese, other value added ingredients, as we call it, in the dressing, and folks get that. And so the shelf life on our greens, we have 2 weeks, sometimes more, for the greens that come out, and then the salads are 10 days. So we actually have a D2C program where folks can get salads. They'll get their salads delivered to them or their leafy greens once a week, and that lasts all week. So you're not going to the store buying something, saying, I got to try to eat it this day or tomorrow. Otherwise, it might go bad if it hasn't already. It sits in there. You can order your lunches for the entire week. So it's a great, there's just so many advantages to both because of the deterministic output and that high quality.
Yeah, I can see that. So some consumers can go to your website, sign up as a customer. I saw you had a pop up with 30% discount first time or something. Right. And they can order, like, home delivery for their greens is essentially the full play there.
Yep. For the greens and those ready to eat salads. So you can get everything you need to make your own salads, top your burger, or just take a salad on the go. Right. So it's awesome.
And so you do everything from obviously the growing, the packaging, and the delivery.
Yeah, we work with some third-party companies, right? So right now, as we've grown, we work with a third-party company right now that packs our salads, like takes our leafy greens and puts them in something in a salad, and then to do our transportation, including the direct to consumer. But we do the packing of our greens at our own facility, and as we expand, we're actually going to bring that salad packing into where the greens get harvested, and then they immediately go through the pack to get all of their value-added ingredients to make that salad. So we can really automate the entire thing.
That's amazing. And so so what are you employing in order to keep everything efficient operationally? So, I mean, technology wise, have you explored new types of automation, or, what kind of innovative things are you using on the tech side of your operation that are helping keep things running smoothly?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. It's great because, when you look at the innovative growing environment, that was a problem we had to solve. But then when when we look at our company and say, well, we're not just making a growing environment, we have to have a good operations environment, a good manufacturing environment. We have developed all of our own software in-house. So when it's our automation, even if it's as simple as let's irrigate the plants, or let's move a tray of plants from point A to point B, we end up having that come to our own embedded system. That is what we call our bot. And so we've created our farm contains about 42 unique different bots. So some of those are used more than once because it's a product we use ourselves. So we're very much a product oriented company. And I think that's so important for innovation and tech development. Right. Which is to say, hey, even when you have an internal customer, don't think of this like an old school manufacturing environment where, okay, I did my engineering. Okay, operator, design person, do this. And then when there's a problem, I guess you call that person if you can get in touch with them. No, this is a completely packaged up product, this automation piece of equipment that is supported. I mean, there's a hotline you can call, so to speak, to get our own internal escalated tech support for it. And there's maintenance documentation. And then we have
these are bots.
The same number.
So these are software bots, or these are actual physical robotics?
These are the actual automation bots, but the key is even if we tie a large third-party piece of equipment that has a PLC into our own system, we still control that PLC with our embedded system. So outside of that, when we go to design the facility design includes a software design, which will be the same at every single site, where we have written all of that software in-house. So it's all proprietary, all in-house. And so it does everything from, when I said the farm wakes up and says, hey, seed me this, and by the way, here you go, harvest that. That's all done because it has backwards planned. Hey, here is the demand plan. Here is what we need. We know it takes 21 days because that doesn't alter. It can say, well, I actually have enough capacity to be able to grow that. I think of it like seats on an airplane. Our system can say, hey, you want to get from, Pittsburgh to San Francisco, and you want to get there in, 21 days from now. We're working backwards. You say, hey, I want that on June 1st, let's say. It looks backwards and say, but you have preferences. You say, I like to sit in front of the wings on the right side of the plane in an aisle seat. And then it just tells you, well, there's no flights that have that seat available. right? But if you want to get there on the second, you can. So all of that demand planning is done. So once that's done, and because of this grow recipe, we've created this platform for our growers. And so this grow recipe, like a smart oven, the plants will go in and come out the same at the exact same time every time. It plans backwards. The only thing left is for that facility to wake up and ask the operations, hey, can you give me this? And furthermore, they don't have to say, hey, resource. We don't have a resource-driven environment. Hey, this part of the grow room, this section of growing, turn your lights on at this time. Okay, let me put the plants there. Oh, shoot, I forgot to turn the lights on. Like that smart oven, we have traceability down to basically a 4x4 growing area in the farm. And so that little piece says, this is what I need, and I'm going to grow it. So the plants are heading ourselves. And then because we have all that proprietary software, to get back to your question, this is really where it's like, great, the grow environment was one thing we had to innovate. The next thing is we are innovating a smart manufacturing environment. It just happens to be for making these leafy greens. And so that system with that customer's custom software, these bots, for example, they automatically, and for tech folks out there, they'll love this, they automatically populate Jira, which is what, even our maintenance team use. And the bots say, hey, by the way, you're supposed to do your quarterly piece of maintenance of this, preventative maintenance of this for me. And then they just check it off the list. Reducing human error as much as we can in every place, and having that smart environment where the machines are really, it is a cobotic approach. Ask for assistance from the human so they can just do their job.
Right. So not only do you have a system in order to grow and distribute these healthy greens, and and provide this service to consumers, you also have kind of a patented smart manufacturing blueprint where you could essentially license that to someone, I'm guessing, and say, grow carrots or whatever you want to do. And you can just use our platform in order to make that happen.
Exactly. Yep. So, right now we're almost 3 companies in one. Like I said, the team making the automation, the team making a turnkey facility you could license, almost like franchising a McDonald's. And then also the innovative food products company. When you look at fast food, a lot of ways, it is kind of similar to that model of innovating in all of these three places. And so right now we're focused, Fifth Season is focused on that being that food products brand, but we do actively talk to folks about potentially we build a farm for you, and the value of our software to that process. And so it's everything from, to get into more value, it's everything from, we could license out the data and have someone growing in one of our existing facilities. They just want to collect data, or they want to get something particular out. We could license space in one of our farms. We could license an entire farm for folks to do. And it becomes like a franchise McDonald's where, hey, it's built this way. It's meant to be run this way. And if you do that, you will get your profit and loss, your high quality plants, your output. And to mention that part on the data, we collect over 26,000 data points a minute in this farm.
Wow.
So a greenhouse, for example, will typically have, 1 temperature, humidity, sensor per acre. We have 3,000 in that 26,000 square foot, but 3-dimensional growing space. But that's an equivalent to a temperature sensor about every 6 feet in a 3-dimensional directional space.
Wow. So all this data is coming from IoT sensors, or just sensors? Maybe not IoT, but
it is IoT. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's how we did it. I mean, and that's been our innovation approach. The reason we can collect all that data is, we'll have expensive, highly reliable, kind of industry standard, if you will, sensors that still tie into our custom embedded systems. But then we can leverage, literally what we said internally was like the idea of makers, and all, cost-effective hardware now, and easy to create sensing and things like that we can have a lot of really cost-effective sensors throughout the system that we can use to collect the data for analysis. And that's definitely a place where we've innovated as well.
That's fascinating. So let me just ask you about this. When it comes to the traditional outdoor farming and what that, there's been challenges with that forever. Farm Aid and all that was created back in the mid 80s in order to help the farmers. So how is this impacting, or how is this working alongside or replacing outdoor farming? Like what's happening with those two worlds?
Certainly. I mean, the big thing, what's interesting is that the indoor vertical farming, or the indoor farming space, and moving towards vertical farming, It's been, gosh, it's about 15 years, $2 billion going into that industry. It's really clean that this is where the innovation is going to happen, which will disrupt the outdoor growing, as you're saying. But that's still only about 2% of the market that is sold. And the biggest reason behind that is because of the unit economics. So outdoor growing, when you get a lot of this leafy green and herb type produce that we're talking about will be grown. If it's not grown in a greenhouse, it'll be grown out west. Or even in another country. And that's where the long supply chains come. That's why when something goes wrong, everybody says, oh, baby romaine. Nobody has baby romaine anymore because they can't tell where it came from. They can't tell what got mixed together. And so if one little bit is contaminated, they just assume basically the entire American supply is contaminated. But there's still, outdoor growing can be cost effective. Indoor farming, it solves a lot of the problems. I mean, so if we really can't get contaminated. I mean, anything is possible, but I can't really think of a way that we could get the same kind of E. coli type contamination in our facility because you don't have humans going out there doing that. So it almost have to be because of a malicious action. But even if someone did that, they'd have to try even harder to do probably impact more than a 20th of it. And that's just one farm. We could have multiple farms in cities. So you're reducing the supply chain, which is going to save costs. You're going to up the resiliency of the food supply in the country, which is important. And so for that, and then you have that high quality and that healthiness of not herbicides and pesticides. So there's a lot of interest in it. And it's really about getting to that unit economics. And a lot of that has been focused on the labor problem that I mentioned. And then a lot of it's also, the energy aspect is still there. And so we're the first, as far as I know, vertical farm that's going to show profitable unit economics, especially coming to our first facility. So we've really played a huge catch up in how we've innovated. And that's just been our software minded, tech forward approach. And, sustainability is a big part of it too. So when you say how's it going to disrupt Western growers, you don't have your soil degradation. You can be up to 95% less water and less land usage because you're 2D or because you're 3D now as opposed to 2D, and not to mention the efficiency, right, that you grow on that in that same equivalent 2D area versus outdoor farming. And so over time it will catch up. And so the disruption will really be that I think this is where humanity will move to growing, just as like a lot of items have moved into greenhouses where 15 years ago that wasn't the case, especially in America. The same thing will happen, I think we'll see for vertical farming. And as people solve all of the difficult problems that it has, because it does have a lot, and they're hard to find until you're doing it, unless you really are looking through it like we did that lens that, no, this is a smart manufacturing problem. This is an automation problem. This is not a growing problem. It's not an ag problem. And so when you're solving those, that that it takes time and you'll get to where, you can hit your Western grown prices.
Right. And so you mentioned the yield. And so, when you think about how this scales up, right? So if you were to really try and provide a mass amount of greens to individuals and, McDonald's, say all the lettuce that's going on every burger is going to come from Fifth Season. Can you do that?
Yeah, one day. So, and the way we would do that, I think the way that we would partner to do that is you build a lot more facilities. We have an inverter model. We're not trying to build 1 mega facility or 4. So we can, for a large customer like that, we could build a facility that grows just what they need and only what they need. So it's optimized to it right next to their distribution centers, which means you get rid of that supply chain. When you look at fresh lettuce, the problems, supply chain is a big part of what this solves. And I really think the next place of innovation, even within vertical farming, now that you check the boxes on the grow environment and you check the boxes on the smart facility supply chain. When you look at the kind of lettuce that goes in, the bag type greens that you buy at the grocery store, they'll have to get them in from the field within 24 hours and get them packed within the next 24 hours. And they're throwing away truckloads that they've already got. So not only is that wasteful for the greens, you just have all that carbon footprint of the trucks. Sure. So, it's going to save a lot of money for those customers. So it's great to see what is sustainability, what is sustainable, what is environmentally friendly, also being on the positive side of business and economics, because you say, well, now you don't have to truck your greens in. Look at this. You have less that you're throwing away. You're paying less for cost. Now you can tell a story to your customers as well about how that's green. And so it's dedicated to you. And we can do the same thing with our ready to eat salads. I think that'd be awesome at McDonald's, not just put the greens on their burger, but also have a great new salad option to buy at McDonald's. Hopefully they're listening to this.
I know some people there, maybe. So But so you talk about sustainability, and I get it. I get the supply chain thing. That's a no brainer. I mean, as soon as you said build the facility right next to the distribution, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's so brilliant. Like, it just makes sense. But don't you then transfer some of the carbon footprint into the electricity and all the stuff that needs to happen in the building?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. You're correct. When you look at the energy usage of any of these types of environment, you do transfer that. I mean, I think, and that's something, and a way that we're differentiated well is like, let's just be honest about what is it that where have you reduced waste and where has it changed?
Mm-hmm.
And from an innovation standpoint, let me say this. I mean, I personally believe like in the technological cul-de-sac, so to speak, and I think we are turning as a species, and I think if you think as a futurist, this is how most movies would look, right? You say, hey, we're going to make X, and the more efficient we get at it, we're going to just turn energy into X.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so what we need to look at, and unlike a futurist movie where we go to another planet and just suck out their energy, but we don't need anything else, but is how can we solve the energy problem, which is great because we're all kind of converging, whereas opposed to having a bunch of disparate problems, how do we make clean energy? How do we get efficiently created energy? That is so important. And so, yes, when you're converting energy into anything in any industry, which I think is where tech innovation will always lead it, we need to be innovating on that energy creation side.
Right. So you mentioned at the very beginning that you originally weren't into agriculture, but then you somehow got into it. Can you explain a bit on how did you get to where you are here at Fifth Season? What brought you through agriculture?
Totally. Well, so my brother, him and I co-founded this startup.
Okay.
He was getting his MBA at Carnegie Mellon University, Tepper School of Business, and so he started looking at this industry and thought it was interesting as a place to potentially start a startup. So he is a business guy. I'm a tech guy, and so even at a very young age, especially with the entrepreneurial bugs hitting us, it's kind of, hey, isn't this the perfect match?
Yeah.
And so he met another guy where it's like they were sort of looking at the automation problem, and maybe you could make some whiz bang piece of automation that's going to help these companies that are starting vertical farming. And he started pulling the thread. And gosh, I don't even think it was a month before he was like, well, heck, we should just sell the produce, meaning we're building the facility and doing this. So he gave me a call. And that's where I, really looking at, he had the realization, and I think it really codified it to say, it's like, well, that is a software problem. You're looking at how does that all work together? And like, honestly, sure, the problem of moving the produce around, that's a problem, but coordinating everything around that. I mean, if you move it, you don't want to irrigate where it was. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be figured out here. And everybody who's done it thus far didn't have some trying to move it automatically. Is it ready to plug and play? And is that even right? And how much does that cost? And so there's always the build versus buy stuff. So that's how we started, is, he gave me the call. And so when it comes to agriculture, so this was a new problem for me. And I just thought, I was working a little bit, I was interested in aquaponics and aquaculture. And that is very similar to what it takes to manage the fertigation, which is like the fertilizers and irrigation. It's a nice portmanteau. That's the term in the industry that's used.
Okay.
And that's a huge part about what needs to be controlled. So I started by saying, hey, that's a system I know of. I was also doing IoT based work at the time. That's something else I know of. And I've just kind of always had this interest in how do you have this, smart operations environment. And so tying it all together and realizing that this problem was it's just been very exciting to work on. And I've gotten very into both growing and eating plants as a result. I was not a big salad eater or greens eater, and now I eat a salad almost every day for lunch. It's our salads because they're amazing, but it's really converted me, actually.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, I'd like to try one, but I'm in Chicago, so I don't know how. Yeah, we'll figure it out. So you're the brainchild behind all of the automation and the 42 bots you developed. That's all from your side of the house.
Well, I'll say a team effort. Me and another Austin, it was one of our co-founders. We worked on a lot of the tech ideas together, and then the grow environment, and then just building up a team all over time. That's how we really just solved each problem one step of the way. And we have a very cross-discipline team. That's an important part. I reference a lot Conway's law and say how you structure your team is how your system will get structured, and vice versa. And so it's just very important to us that we have hardware engineer, a software engineer, a grower, an operations expert, a food safety expert, working on every step of the process and say, let's look at seed. Not let me go through seed through pack, and then the next person comes in and say, I'm going to do food safety, seed through pack. You'll eventually realize it's kind of like you didn't do DFM. You'll eventually realize, oh, we didn't design for the manufacturer. We didn't design for food safety. And that comes back. So it's having that team collaborate every step of the way. And that's really how we've changed the game. In fact, we got 100% on our SQF level 2 food safety review. It's got new names that people classically know it is SQF level 2. But that is just another differentiation factor. So that's incredibly rare. And so the auditor was like, this is only the second time in 25 years I've given 100%. And that all can happen though, because you have this indoor controlled environment with a bunch of software that's ensuring that everybody does exactly the right thing. So it's repeatable, and that kind of deterministic thing, like you said, it comes to the operations and we can repeat that. So that's just another exciting aspect of it.
That's very cool. Congratulations on that. It's kind of like the Tesla safety rating that's never been matched.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'll get a little bit deeper into the software for a minute for the software nerds.
Sure. It's my favorite thing.
How are you building all this? Like, are you building and are you developing it in open source? Like what's all the toolkits that you're using and leveraging?
Sure. So when we started, I didn't know what to call it because it's like bigger than full stack. When you look at IoT even, it's like super stack. So it's like, what happens when you're going to do everything from, we're going to have our hardware abstraction layer down at the hardware thing, the actuator sensor for your IoT, and we're going to do stacks all the way up to the firmware that is efficiently firmware, quote unquote, which is efficiently connected to the cloud, and the cloud all the way to a UI. And there's a lot of folks that are doing that. We're doing it in a pretty difficult, tough, a lot of tough tech problems to solve environment. So what are we using every step of the way? To be a little open about it, we have our own embedded systems throughout the facility. We code at a high level language, right? So I guess I'll throw it out there for the tech software guys. I'm anti-PLC. I was gonna think, how do I want to put that in public? But I'm anti-PLC. So we're coding in Node.js even at that quote unquote firmware level.
Okay.
To be doing everything from hardware control, a controller, like your controls, logic. In a very modern sense, with a lot of modularity, a lot of abstraction, to some business logic, to your cloud, transportation layers and things that are going to be working with your IoT cloud. And then coming into that, we've been on AWS, we're on Azure. We're always kind of looking for what's best for the open. We do have an edge network, I should also say, at our farm. So in the cloud and locally, we're leveraging Kubernetes. To have nodes on. And so we look at it, we're like, each bot is almost like your fingers, right? And just like your finger, if it was to touch something too hot, it moves itself before your brain even registers. But also there is the brain to help coordinate all of these things together that you need to do and help provide instructions. And that's our very robotic approach, that each thing is making its own decisions. But there's also this edge that helps with that and coordinating what the farm needs to do. And then we have the cloud that, once we have multiple farms, can coordinate among them and also make it so you could update your grow recipe or your operations planning, from Hawaii. I can also, like a server, go in and turn on an individual relay set of lights in a grower from a command line if I wanted to. And so it's just all going, when you're looking at that cloud stack, again, we actually use Node.js throughout and in Azure for our stack there. But it's very IoT-like environment, very data center almost like environment to get from where you're at connected to the cloud all the way down to a hardware resource at the farm.
That's fascinating. I'm going to have an Azure, one of the top Azure evangelists on pretty soon. Someone I know there who we've worked together over the years, and I'll make sure I share this with her, because that's a really fascinating super stack. I honestly haven't heard that term, but I get it, because you are stacking all the way down to the physical sensor and or up, whichever way you want to look at it.
Whichever way, right? Depends on where you started your career, actually. I think is how people
right.
look at it. But it's fun. Hey, I'm trying to coin that term. Help me out, because I do like it.
Yeah, it's good.
And there's what I was lucky to find is there's amazing developers out there like myself that's kind of one way or the other through their career or just because they've been programming at home all the time and love to play with everything. The maker movement, I think, is a big reason for this, as well as how easy it is to make cloud software. So if you're a hardware guy, you start programming cloud stuff. If you're a cloud guy, you start programming down with Adafruit hardware or something like that. And you really get that full breadth. And so we have folks that really can be quote unquote super stack developers. And that's key. That system awareness is so key,
right?
Because it's so complex, really.
Right. So let me ask you a bit about your competition. So it really sounds like you are super cutting edge, leading edge in this space. And like I said, I saw this Ag Tech Summit coming up with hundreds of companies that are involved. I'm assuming you guys are in that. I think that's where I found Fifth Season.
Yeah.
Talk about the competition and, like how easy is it to recreate what you've done there? Or are there different sectors in this indoor ag tech space?
There are, and when I talk about only having like 2% of the market, it's almost like too much competition. It reminds me kind of Sirius and XM realizing, hey, really, we're not satellite radio. We branded that wrong. Really, you're buying streaming music. There's a lot of competition. We're just one method, and that's really how I see vertical farming. There's been a lot of tech companies that have come and gone. Tremendous amount of money put into space. Some companies have a decent amount to show for it. Others not that much. We've been incredibly capitally and time efficient for ourselves. And so when you look at what some other folks are doing, I mean, for us, let me talk about some of our design principles, our system architecting principles. And when I say system, it spans more than just engineering, as I was talking about before. But like I said earlier on, it's like bring plants to the people, not people to the plants. The second major thing to hit on your point was like design around existing growing and automation methods. And as a result, there are places where we can leverage 50, 60, 80% of some kind of method, some kind of design out there, even work with a third-party company to help design it. And then that's much more reliable. It helps us move fast. Not everything we made is customized. But it means that, in the end, that last mile there, if you will, or if you were to use robotic terms, the end effector, but a lot of times there's like a little bit more automation, that 20% of automation there to that end in what we made, it makes it very hard to replicate, right? And so we have a pending patent on our growing process. So it's hard to replicate, but easy to imitate. I mean, I think if you were to come to our farm and be able to walk through and look everything as a talented engineer, you would be able to go replicate it. Right. Sure. So it's not that if you're staring at it, you can't understand what's going on, but it is novel. It's not something you need to stand. But for example, with some of the third-party companies we work for, they are international companies that provide automation solutions to companies all over the world, companies as big as Amazon, right? Or provide parts and solutions to hardware-based solutions to companies as large as Home Depot. So we have all kinds of we worked on them with customizations. Sometimes we'll get things and we have customizations that we have manufactured and add to it. So that is our secret sauce, but that also means that we're easy to replicate. And so I really think that's a big place where we've differentiated. When you look at some competitors, I think that there's someone to use the term noodling. So there's like noodling around, hey, well, now that we don't need to rely on the sun, why don't we grow upside down? It's like, well, you could, right? Or why don't we grow where there's just greens and roots and stuff everywhere, which is what a lot of aeroponic growing looks like. It's like, yeah, that's awesome. But like, if you need to move the plants around, how are you going to do that, especially without hurting them? It's like, okay, well, now you can't move them midlife. And so these two principles together, I think really, it took us a couple years really to land on what our final solution was. To implement in this flagship farm, but it's what drove us there. And then last but not least, as I mentioned before, the software side, from what we've heard, and I don't know, because everybody does release a certain amount, because there's the battle for capital when you look at these startups like I was talking about. But in this space, we're really, we're kind of all together in this new sustainable approach in vertical farming. But from my understanding is that we're the only one that has a completely proprietary software system, especially end to end. Right. And especially doing that super stack like we've talked about. And that, I think the fact that there's a great talk by Steve Jobs I listened to. I think the answer's been out there for a long time, where he was giving a talk and talked about, hey, when you want to change manufacturing, he's like, what we needed to do is we just got some software guys and said, don't worry, you will enjoy this. It's actually an exciting problem. Go look at it with your software mindset. And how would you solve it? Right. And that's what we've done. Right. And as a result, I think we get something that's very different. Right. And as a result, it can tie together with software. It just ties in. It's not an afterthought. And so that and training everyone to have that software mindset, even our, grow researchers or plant scientists, having that mindset, that's really been another way that we have differentiated from them. And so I think that's what you'll see if you start to look around the space is, oh, look at these novel ways to grow, but can folks automate around it? Look at these awesome robotics, but when you have your completely uncontrolled environment, do you need to make it such that you would have the same robotics as if it was going through a field which you don't control, right? And so I think that's, a way, kind of a little hint at some of our secret sauces there. And then finally, have you made your own software, and do you really, is your software the brain? Is it truly the brain that's really controlling everything and really thinking through everything? And that's really the difference.
Yeah. And it's fascinating too. What I'm so happy, and this gets me excited to listen to all this, because when I first started thinking about, what kind of innovations happening with agriculture, right? It's an area that's okay. You throw a seed in the ground and it grows a plant on its own. It's like you water, give it some sun. Like, where's the innovation? And because it's been around for 10,000 years, whatever. So this has so much more. What you've described over the last 45 minutes has so much more innovation that I think people don't even realize how much you're doing there, or what you've accomplished, and it's quite impressive. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
What do you see for fifth season in 5 years? Like, what's the big play? Or maybe you're already there. You guys have been around for how long now?
We've been around for 5 years.
5. So what happens in 5 to 10 years from now for fifth season?
Oh my gosh. I think everybody will know her name, right? That's my hope. Everybody knows her name. And in 5 to 10 years, we've got farms in many places, so we can be in every, grocery stores and other places. That's why I'm excited about our salads, especially as we automate that more and get it to folks, that you could get a healthy to eat salad at a convenience store, at a gas station, or going to your grocery store, getting the greens. And so it's really to all of a sudden for folks to know, here's a great food brand. There's 7 seconds I pick up a great food brand, and I'm exposed to this one with fifth season becomes that name that folks know. And then also, as people look into it, they're starting to understand what are the advantages to indoor agriculture, to the point of your conversation here about all of that, but even more so this particular type, herbicide and pesticide free, and what that means. And so people, it's both that exposure to folks, just, as a company having that and getting out and helping people. Every time we build a farm in an urban environment, we're going to open up agricultural jobs in a region where people don't typically have it. And I think that's exciting. And so just getting people to get that exposure of, this may be the last, I don't know, agricultural revolution, and we're growing in this urban environment, and I can buy it, and they can understand the benefits of it. To me, that's what the next 5 to 10 years hold. And then, after that, I think it's just making sure we build our Mars farm, like I was saying.
Right. Yeah, sure. Elon will invite you on the rocket to
that's the goal. Hopefully he's listening too. Yeah.
All right. Well, Brac, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a fascinating discussion. I wish you guys the best of luck. I really want to try one of the salads. I think it sounds awesome, and I'll have to figure out how to get some to Chicago. But
we'll do that. We'll get you a VOP treatment, and our D2C stuff. We'll just make sure it gets overnighted to you.
Okay.
It comes packed, old packs and everything. I'll get it to you.
Oh, that's great. But thank you. Thanks again, Brac. And maybe what we should do is connect again in a few months, 3 to 6 months, and we'll do another touch base and see how things are going, and we can continue the conversation.
Oh, I love to do that. Yeah, keep you updated on how it's going in the industry and what new things we're doing. We're always different every week, it feels like. So definitely in that time frame, we'll have a lot of news.
Sounds good. All right, Brac. Thanks again. Have a good day.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.